Let's take a look at diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion are general terms that represent complex processes. A closer look at each of these terms will help explain why they're closely related and why leaders need to be aware of both concepts when addressing diversity within their group or organization. In the most general sense, diversity is about variety or difference. I like to define diversity as the mix of differences that make a difference. Diversity matters because we live in an increasingly globalized world that's become widely interconnected. Researchers have defined diversity in a multitude of ways. For example, diversity is often used to refer to the mixture of races, genders, or religions that make up a group of people. We define diversity as the amount of difference among members of a group or an organization. Simply put, diversity is the mix of differences that make a difference. These are also referred to as social identities, the parts of our self concept that come from our group membership. Secondary dimensions include geographic location, military and work experience, family status, income, religion, education, first language, organizational role and level, and communication and work styles. The primary dimensions of diversity are more powerful and less changeable, while the secondary dimensions can change, are less visible, and are less influential in how they impact our lives. Inclusion is the process of incorporating different individuals into an organization. It's creating an environment where people who are different feel that they're part of the whole. Similarly, inclusion is about the majority incorporating the opinions of the minority and giving voice to the people who are seldom heard. Inclusion means feeling like you're a full member of the group, but at the same time maintaining your own identity. It requires a balance between belonging and uniqueness. One additional consideration is this process of equity, recognizing the historic inequalities that have kept some groups, particularly racial minorities, from having the same access to programs, resources, and jobs as others have. Equity recognizes that not all individuals start from the same place. Equity is not the same as equality, which aims to ensure that all people receive equal resources and equal treatment from the very beginning. An equality perspective doesn't recognize the discrimination and systemic inequalities that have created the social disparities in our society. Diversity focuses on recognizing differences, inclusion on embracing those differences, and equity aims to provide equal access to resources for historically disadvantaged people. Individuals have two opposing needs in regard to being part of a group. First, they have a desire to assimilate and be included. Second, they have a need to differentiate themselves from the group. People seek an optimal balance between inclusion and differentiation. To better understand how people balance these needs, let's consider an inclusion framework. Exclusion represents individuals who do not feel part of things. Exclusion occurs when organizations fail to see the value in the unique qualities of diverse employees and fail to accept them as organizational leaders. Differentiation describes individuals who feel unique and respected, but will also feel left out and not part of the in-group. Differentiation occurs when organizations accept and value the unique quality of members who are different, but then fail to let these individuals become full members of the organization. Assimilation represents people who feel that they are insiders and in the organization's in-group, but whose unique characteristics are not really valued by the organization. Inclusion describes individuals who feel they belong and are valued for their unique beliefs, attitudes, values, and backgrounds. This represents the ultimate way to address diversity. It means accepting others and at the same time valuing them for who they are without requiring them to give up valued identities or cultural features. Inclusion is the integration of an individual's connectedness to others and their individuality. Inclusion is essential for integrating everyone into a group or an organization. It's important to recognize that inclusion exists when individuals experience it. As shown at the top of the inclusion model, the way for society or community thinking about and addressing inclusion is the way to an individual in terms of their experience of inclusion. At the leadership level, which is indispensable to promoting inclusion at all levels, leaders need to set the tone for inclusion and hold followers accountable for their inclusion practices. Another form of inclusion occurs at the group level. Group members must actively value the styles and perspectives of other members to be their most effective. Groups promote inclusion when they acknowledge and respect individuals' differences, promote collaborative work on tasks, and address conflicts productively. The interpersonal level is perhaps the most common place where inclusive practices are played out. Through our interpersonal communication with others, we let them know our need to be included and our willingness to include others. The individual inclusion experience is the foundation of the framework. As a leader, the challenge is to foster that sense of inclusion among one's followers, as well as influence the organization's approach to inclusion itself. A questionnaire to measure inclusion in work groups identified 6 key components of the experience of inclusion. Components are like the ingredients of inclusion. These components provide a good blueprint for actions and behaviors and communication that leaders should engage in to provide inclusion for others. To help individuals feel safe, it's important for leaders to treat followers in non-threatening ways. In situations where one person feels different than others, the leader plays a fundamental role in letting that person know that they're accepted. Even if a person's opinion go directly against the majority opinion, that individual can feel safe that he or she will not experience negative repercussions. In addition to feeling safe, inclusion comes from feeling involved and engaged. Helping followers find this feeling is a challenge for leaders, but worthwhile because engaged and involved followers are more productive. Cultural differences may affect how followers are perceived by others in the group. For example, employees from some cultures may be less likely to speak up or contribute to group projects and may be overlooked or regarded as weaker members of a diverse team. Where leaders put themselves in the shoes of others or their followers, they can get in touch with what it means to be well thought of, worthy, and wanted. Followers want to feel that they belong and are connected to the group, that the leader trusts and cares about them, and that they're intrinsic to the group. Another component contributing to inclusion is an experience or feeling of influence. When people express their ideas and they're heard, they feel like they exist and that they are meaningful in the group. When an individual is in a staff meeting and others listen to their ideas, it makes that individual feel significant. If that person's comments influence the direction of the group, it really makes the person feel significant. As a leader, each of us has the responsibility to be fair-minded and open-minded towards all of our followers. Unfortunately, in the effort to successfully embrace diversity and inclusion, a leader can run into barriers. Leaders must confront these barriers head-on in order to effectively address diversity and develop inclusion in their organization. As the word suggests, ethnocentrism is the tendency for individuals to place their own group, ethnic, racial, or cultural, at the center of their observations of others and the world. Ethnocentrism is a universal tendency. Skilled leaders are able to negotiate the fine line between trying to overcome ethnocentrism and knowing when to remain grounded in their own cultural values. Closely related to ethnocentrism is prejudice. Prejudice is a largely fixed attitude, belief, or emotion held by an individual about another individual or group that's based on faulty or unsubstantiated data. Prejudice refers to judgments we make about others based on previous decisions or experiences and involves inflexible generalizations that are resistant to change or evidence to the contrary. Prejudice can result in disadvantages or advantages for some groups over others and systemic discrimination. This occurs when patterns of discriminatory behavior, policies, or practices become part of an organization. Also called implicit bias, unconscious bias is the term used to describe when we have attitudes towards people or associate stereotypes with them without our conscious knowledge that we're doing so. Thoughts and feelings that are implicit if we're unaware of them or mistaken about their nature. Sometimes these attitudes actually contradict our own explicit beliefs. A stereotype is a fixed belief held by an individual that classifies a group of people with a similar characteristic as alike. Stereotypes allow people to respond to complex information quickly. A final barrier to inclusion is privilege. Privilege is an advantage held by a person based on age, race, ethnicity, gender, class, or some other cultural dimension, which gives those who have it power over those who don't. Privilege has been described as an unfair advantage that some people have in comparison to others. In situations where it exists, privilege excludes others and puts them at a disadvantage. Collectively, these barriers to embracing diversity and inclusion underscore the difficulty in accepting and confirming those who are different from ourselves.